You're listening to Let's Get It On with Big John McCarthy and Sean Wheelock.
Big John McCarthy has witnessed the best that the UFC had to offer.
That is it! Game, set, match! We have a new champion!
Your backstage pass to the world of mixed martial arts and combat sports on the Lineup Media Group Podcast Network.
Let's get it on!
Hey everyone, welcome to Let's Get It On with Big John McCarthy and me, Sean Wheelock. Every week on this podcast, John and I give you an inside look at MMA and combat sports, always separating fact from fiction. On this week's program, we'll discuss the comments of Rhonda Rousey, in which she told ESPN the magazine that she'll retire from MMA if she doesn't defeat Holly Holm in next year's rematch. And we'll look at Rousey's ranking as Yahoo's most searched athlete in 2015. Plus, Big John and I will speak with Trisha Morrison, the widow of former WBO World Heavyweight Champion Tommy Morrison, who had his boxing license suspended by the Nevada Commission in 1996 for a positive HIV test, which effectively ended his career in boxing. Trisha Morrison vehemently denies that her late husband ever had the HIV virus and will tell us why she's filed a civil lawsuit in an effort to prove this in court, as well as the court of public opinion. And as we do on every episode of Let's Get It On, John will answer your questions. Submit them via email, info@letsgetitonpodcast.com, and on Twitter by using the hashtag AskBJM. Remember that you can download and subscribe to our podcast on the iTunes Store. For Android, download the Stitcher app and subscribe. And you can go straight to our website, letsgetitonpodcast.com. Let's Get It On is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/letsgetiton. There are over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, and MP3 player. Rhonda Rousey has chosen ESPN the magazine as the media outlet to give her first comprehensive interview since losing to Holly Holm at last month's UFC 193 in Melbourne, Australia. In the magazine's cover story, Rousey said of her career in MMA, quote, "I guess it's all going to be determined by what happens in the rematch. Everything is going to be determined by that. Either I'll win and keep going or I won't, and I'll be done with everything." John, that's a really bold statement.
It's a statement, I think, kind of made out of right now anger and frustration. And it's a frustration of, having to deal with what she hasn't had to deal with in the past. And she's got a lot of people attacking her and saying, that she was never any good and all these stupid comments that people are making. The part that needs to be brought out about this whole thing, Sean, in my opinion, is, God damn it was a fight. It's only a fight. And she lost it. Okay, that doesn't make her a bad person. It doesn't make her a bad fighter. It doesn't make her the person that, was going to save the world. Now she can't. It was a fight. She went out, she lost. She got beat by someone who on that day was a better fighter. That's going to happen to everyone. And people need to get over it. And in a way, Rhonda has to get over it in her own fashion. She's got to sit there and understand, hey, this is not going to define me. It is, it's part of our world. You're going to go out there and win. I think the part where she started to get caught up in is all of those quick victories and all of everyone expecting her to win fast. I think in the end, it started to get to her and she started to expect it of herself. And you cannot expect that of yourself. You have to go out there and understand if you're a champion, you got 5 rounds to win that fight, not 5 seconds. No one can do it in 5 seconds all the time. And so, she's got to learn from this. This is a learning experience for her. She's making some comments that, right now, I'm sure in her heart she feels, that if she doesn't beat Holly a second time, that would be it. She would be done. Maybe it's true, but, time heals all wounds. And, this wound will heal. It will. And it's just a matter of how she moves on from here is going to define how people are going to look at her.
I remember hearing the story of George Foreman when he lost to Muhammad Ali in 1974, the Rumble in the Jungle in Zaire. And he said that he was so humiliated after the loss that when he left his home, he would actually put on a disguise. He would put on a wig or a fake beard or funny glasses. He felt so humiliated. And I think from 1974 and Foreman to 2015 and Rhonda Rousey, I think she feels humiliated. But maybe because you and I can see the big picture where she can't, she's too deep into this, it's one loss. Your career is not defined by a single victory nor a single loss. It's the scope and the body of your career. And maybe Rhonda Rousey just still can't get to that point.
So, let's take a look at this, okay? Because I'm gonna break this down as simple as I can. Let's take a look at female MMA, women's MMA, from the point where it really started getting going. When do you think that was, Sean?
When women's MMA really got going?
Really started getting going, because I'm not going to go all the way back into, some of the girls that were fighting, Jennifer Howe and those who was, Jennifer was tough. And she fought, Roxanne Modafferi when Roxanne was a little tiny teenage girl, basically, and there was those fights. And Hook and Shoot had the tournaments, the all-female tournaments. Right. You had Remix in Japan that had Marloche Cohen going against Becky Levi and all these different people.
It was Strikeforce, though, right? It was Strikeforce. It was with Cyborg and Jan Finney coming in. Misha
a little
Tate.
bit before. I'll even give Elite XC. The one thing that I'll give Elite XC is they popularized Gina Carano.
Yeah,
and they were the ones that Elite XC had two people. They had Gina Carano and they had Kimbo Slice. Right. And those are the people they were really putting a lot of their their marbles behind, but they made Gina, the face of women's MMA, and they did a great job in doing it. And she did a great job with it. And then Elite XC was, disbanded, and a lot of the contracts were picked up by Strikeforce, and Strikeforce ended up having Gina's contract. And you look at the fighting and everything that's gone on, there was, there's a lot of elements that have brought women's MMA along, but Rhonda Rousey has brought it way farther than any other female could ever sit there and think about right now as far as what they've done. There's been great female fighters, but none of them have brought the sport to the level for women's MMA that Rhonda Rousey has. If it wasn't for Rhonda, it wouldn't be in the UFC. Straight out. Dana has said it. What more do you want? Okay? He saw her. He liked the way that she, carried herself. He loved the way she fought. She was different. That was what got him going. Okay, that's the biggest promotion. If it wasn't for Rhonda, we're saying that, women's MMA wouldn't be in the biggest promotion. So has she done something for women's MMA? She's done more than anybody else
More
has.
than anybody.
Okay,
more than
so
anybody.
Does she have something to be proud of? Hell yes. Okay, her entire body of work is something to be proud of. What she's accomplished inside of the cage, what she has accomplished outside of the cage is all something that anybody, I don't give a frick who you are, would be proud of the accomplishments that she has attained through hard work and going out and putting herself on the line. Because here's the thing, everybody that wants to sit there and to criticize and everything, long ago, Teddy Roosevelt had a great speech, and it said, it's not the fucking critic that counts. It's the goddamn athlete that steps inside there and they drop their sweat and blood on the ground. They're the ones with all the dust and everything and the scarring and the Mars on their face. They're the ones that deserve the respect, not the critic. The critic doesn't do anything because they don't know shit, and they don't. And I just altered a great speech, and I'm sorry for that, but
that was salty language from President Roosevelt, John.
Yeah, well, that wasn't Franklin. That was Teddy, baby. And it's just, hey, everyone likes to knock people down, and you can sit there and knock Rhonda down all you want. It doesn't mean you're right. Okay, she's done everything at the pinnacle of this sport. She's done it all. If she doesn't want to fight again, that's great. That's her choice. And if that's really what she wants, then I'm 100% for it. But she doesn't owe anybody any explanations right now. She doesn't owe it to anybody. She doesn't owe it to ESPN. She doesn't owe it to me. She doesn't owe it to freaking MMA fighting, the UFC. All she's got to do is, take your time. Get yourself back. Figure out what you did in that fight that, maybe you should have done better. And go back to working at making yourself better, because that's how you'll come back and possibly win when you get back in the cage.
John, my favorite quote, I have this on my Twitter page in the heading. If you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same. It's Rudyard Kipling.
Yeah.
And
Rudyard Kipling.
Rudyard Kipling, yeah. I'm an English major and I botched his name, but I love the quote. Thank you very much. But with you look with Rousey, and maybe she needs to take that to heart. And what Kipling was saying clearly is victory, don't get too overwhelmed, but defeat, don't get too down either.
Exactly.
You have to find a balance.
And there is that balance. And it's hard to, especially when you're a young athlete, it's hard to understand it. When you get old and decrepit like I am, you start to understand it. And it's so hard for a young athlete to understand, hey, although you think that one fight is going to define you, it doesn't. It does not. And you know what? We're all going to win in battles at times, and we love those moments. And we're all going to lose at times in battles, and we hate those moments. But if you put yourself into battles, you're going to win some and you're going to lose some. That's just part of this. You can't win them all. And so it's a matter of learning to don't get too high over the ones and don't get too low over the other.
John, last month on Let's Get It On, when we were giving our post-fight analysis of Rousey's loss versus Holly Holm at UFC 193 in Australia, I said, not for certainty, because I don't know for certainty, but I was pretty positive, pretty confident making this statement, that there were people in Rhonda Rousey's camp, her inner circle or just beyond the inner circle, who were saying, kid, you're a beautiful girl, you're 28 years old, you don't need this fighting business anymore. You can go into WWE, you can have a film career, you can be a TV star, you can do a lot of different things. I wonder now if Rousey is listening to those voices. Again, I don't know it for sure, but I know the fight industry, I know the entertainment industry. There are people who are going to say you have other options. And when she's putting at 28 years old so much pressure on herself, I've got to win this rematch or I'm done. I just wonder if those voices aren't getting to her.
Yeah, but again, I think it's the talk of a young lady who is sat at the top. And you got to look and understand, man, when you sit at the top, there's nowhere else to go. There's only one direction. You can't hover off of the top of the mountain and continue to climb into the air when there's nothing to stand on. You can only go so high. But there is a direction to go down, and it's going to happen to all of us. It's going to happen to everyone. And you need to understand that when you do take that step down, it's not the end of the world, and you can always step back up. But when you get to that point, and it's tough for people that have never gotten to the point of being a world champion to understand, it defines you in many ways. There's a lot of great things that come with it. There's a lot of terrible things. We've talked about that, but you need to be able to encapsulate it and understand it. All these people that are coming after you, there's only one, there's multiple directions for them to go. And so they're trying to, knock you off the top of the hill so they're on top. And it's all of it can become overwhelming mentally to somebody in the pursuit of this is who I am. And I think that she got into, this is who I am. I'm this ass kicker. I'm this person that goes out and destroys people. And, she's made a ton of money off of it, and I'm sure in some way she's worried that maybe some of those sponsorships could leave. Some of the attraction from the movie industry could, diminish. All of these things are things that they're crossing her mind. And she knows that, if I go out and lose again, well, then that's definitely going to be gone. You don't know anything, okay? People end up liking someone for multiple reasons. It may be that someone likes Rhonda because she is this ass kicker. It could be they like her because they like the way she talks. It could be they like her just because of the way she, she handles herself in an interview and, does things. You never know, but don't get to the point where you think that fight is what's going to define you for the rest of your life.
We knew going in that she felt tremendous pressure of expectation. I think it was even to a level that we probably didn't fully understand.
I don't think any of us understood how much she actually carried on her shoulders, and then again, it's self-imposed.
Absolutely.
I don't think that we understood exactly how much weight she was carrying.
So just to put it in perspective and furthering the point what you've said, as much as somebody like Cyborg has done or Gina Carano has done for women's MMA, Marloes Coenen.
A ton.
A ton. But Rhonda Rousey is just completely to a different level. So to illustrate that point further, last week Yahoo.com announced that Rousey finished as their most searched athlete of 2015. Now you think about that. This is an MMA fighter, number one, and a female MMA fighter, number one. So it's not Lionel Messi. It's not Tom Brady. It's not Sidney Crosby. It's not Kobe Bryant. It's not Maria Sharapova, who finished second. It's not Floyd Mayweather Jr. It is Rhonda Rousey, who began her pro MMA career 4.5 years ago. That's phenomenal. But again, there's a tremendous amount of pressure that comes with that.
Real simple. Is that an accomplishment?
I think it is a tremendous accomplishment. I honestly do. It speaks to her popularity.
How could it not be? Because there's only one reason people are searching your name. Why is it?
They like you, or they're interested in you.
Interested in you. Yeah. They want to know more about you. Well, obviously, you're doing something right.
Yeah. And you know, I spoke too soon, because they don't have to like you. There are plenty of people out there grumbling on Rousey who are happy she lost, but they're still fascinated by her. They're still searching her name. You're right. It's not like, it's interest, John.
You know what? Haters, you got to love them, because they don't do anything in their life that puts their ass on the fucking line, but they love to hate the people that do. Come on. You know what? All you can do is take a look at her body of work. It has been incredible, extraordinary, and like everything, that can only go on so long. There's going to be a bump in the road. I don't care who you are. I don't care what it is. You're going to get beat somewhere along the way. Donald Trump gets beat in business. Not very often, but it happens. Okay? You can take a look at Messi. He loses on the soccer field.
Yep.
Look at LeBron James. He loses basketball games. All right? Tom Brady gets his butt kicked in football every now and then. Most of the time, he wins. But he loses at times too, and it's going to happen to everyone.
And Tom Brady isn't saying, if the Patriots lose this upcoming weekend, and I throw
I'm going to quit football.
I'm retiring. I'm done. And when I read those comments by Rousey, ESPN, the magazine, it's on ESPN.com, I didn't find them motivational. Actually, I found them sad. I really found them sad. Not pathetic sad, but like there's a melancholiness to that, where you think, wow, is that really what it's come to? You've had this brilliant career. You were a judo Olympic bronze medalist. You've been the face of women's MMA. You've taken women's MMA to the next level. You're the most recognizable, not just UFC fighter, but MMA fighter on the planet. And you're putting all of that pressure to, I have to win this rematch or I'm done. Sad is the word I come up with.
Yeah, well, I think it's sad, and it's also, in some ways, it's a showing of a young person learning to deal with failure. And, you know, it's not an easy thing for a lot of people to deal with, and they take and put so much emphasis on succeeding and winning and all these things that failure can absolutely start to make them implode. And this is something that, you know, Rhonda's going to need to work with, you know, and so this is why you get sports psychologists and all this, because failure is the thing, you know, when you look in, you know, I don't know what was going through Rhonda's mind during the fight. Okay. But I know in ones that I've been part of or anything like that, it's, you're getting hit, you know, you're getting hit, and you're telling yourself, I'm okay. And you just, you know, and you're looking for that little spot that you can possibly, you know, do something, and you keep on getting hit, and you keep on telling yourself, okay, until all of a sudden you're not okay anymore, you know, and it happens, but you never lose that focus of, I don't have a chance here. You know, you're always looking, I've got an opportunity. I'm going to win this. And that's the way you have to think. And that's the way I'm sure she was thinking. And I'm sure, you know, during that fight, you know, she doesn't remember the kick that hit her. You know, that was knocked out of her memory. But she'll have effects from it that she'll remember. You know, she's going to have effects that are going to last for a while with her and stuff. But all of this is things that she needs to let go of. She needs to get rid of. She needs to learn from the things that she can learn from to make herself better. And all of the other things, it's a weight that's not worth carrying.
Every week here on Let's Get It On, we bring you our poll question. You can cast your vote on our website, letsgetitonpodcast.com. Last week we asked, do you feel that this is the worst era in heavyweight boxing history? John, what do you think? Which way do you think it went?
I think it went yes.
It did. 81% of you voted yes.
Ooh, 81%.
81%. This week's poll question: do you believe that Rhonda Rousey will retire from MMA if she loses to Holly Holm in next year's rematch? Let your voice be heard. Vote yes or no on our website. Let's get it on podcast.com.
My voice is being heard. No.
And John, there is a recent historical precedent, and that's Gina Carano. She never made a public pronouncement, but she was undefeated. She lost to Cyborg in the Strikeforce cage, and she left MMA. There was talk she was going to come to the UFC or Bellator earlier in 2015. It never materialized. But for all intents and purposes, that one loss, and she's done it. I do not think she's coming back.
I don't either. But that's a rarity. It's very rare when you get an athlete that ends up just, you know what, I'm done. But it happens. It happens in all sports. It happens. Go back into college football's got guys that win the Heisman Trophy, never go pro. It hasn't happened in freaking 50 some years, 60 years, but it happens. And so, hey, it could be that, that's what occurs. I think everything depends upon the level of the competitor. And when you talk about Rhonda Rousey, you're talking about an elite competitor, someone that's been doing it for so long that when you get away from it, that itch of competition starts to become a hell of a scratch. It needs a scratch. And it becomes painful almost. So I don't know if she's the competitor that can just say, that's it, I'm done, and pull it.
And John, final point on this. Do you think as we move closer to the rematch in 2016 for Rousey versus Holm, that Rousey just internally is going to soften her own position on this? Or do you think she'll carry that mindset into that rematch? I've got to win or I'm done. Because I hope she does. Mindset. Yeah, me too.
It's not the mindset you need. Going into a fight, the mindset that's needed is the mindset of a strong competitor of, I will do my best. I will be smart. I will fight my fight, not my opponent's. Those are the things you want going in. You don't want, if I don't win this, I'm done. Because you just said what's going to happen.
Every week on this podcast, John and I answer your questions. Ask away via email, info@letsgetitonpodcast.com, on Twitter by using the hashtag AskBJM, and now by using SpeakPipe, available on our website, letsgetitonpodcast.com. And of course, please include a pronunciation guide for your name. Our first question was submitted via SpeakPipe.
Hello, Mr. McCarthy and Mr. Wheelock. This is Sammy from Oklahoma City. I had the privilege of attending Bellator 146, and I was sitting cage side when my friend asked me, isn't that the guy that works for the UFC? Speaking about Mr. John McCarthy. I said, no, he does not work for the UFC. He does not work for Bellator. He does not work for World Series of Fighting. He works for the respective athletic commission of the state in which the event is being held in. And my friend asked me, well, I wonder how much they get paid. And it got me to thinking, not how much you get paid. I understand that's a private matter. But how much knowledge did I have? Was I correct in saying that you work for the athletic commissions and not the promoter? And my second part of the question is, how do you get selected to referee in certain states and especially certain countries? Who invites you to referee those? Is it the promoter or is it the athletic commission? I love the podcast. Please keep up the good work. Thank you.
Well, Sammy, good question. There's a lot going on there with your questions. So let's get to the part of for the officials. The officials do not work for the promotion. There are many promotions out there. And you look at MMA, you've got the UFC, Bellator, World Series of Fighting, Titan, Victory, all these different RFA, all these different promotions. Those are promoters that have contracts with fighters. The officials, the referees, the judges, timekeepers, they work for the athletic commission. The athletic commission is who pays us. Now, that doesn't mean that the athletic commission doesn't get paid by the promoter for our services when in turn they turn that over to us. But the athletic commission is the one that hires us. They're the ones that assign us to the show. They're the ones that assign the fights that each individual is going to do. And we, to get a license with those athletic commissions, we have to apply. We apply to the athletic commission, and based upon your experience and different places, if you've worked in different places that you're telling them, and the amount of time and the things that they can verify as far as your background, will get you the ability to possibly be licensed in that state. Once you're licensed in the state, then any show that they have, you have the possibility, not probability, the possibility of working that show because you're one of the licensed officials in that state. So the amount of money that we make is dependent upon the individual commission. All commissions pay their officials a different amount. And it's kind of become public of what we make.
Yes, it has. Since last week's show, John, you blew up the headlines.
I know, it's ridiculous. But, it's the whole point for everyone is to understand that if you're an MMA official, a boxing official, you don't do this looking to make a living. You're not going to make a living off of it. You are doing this because you love the sport. It's a nice second job, let's say, if you want, for some people, but it's not going to be anyone's main profession because it's going to be very hard for most people to make enough money to have a living off of it. But that's not why you do it. You do it because you love the sports. And I'm trying to think of I've gone on so long, I forget Sammy's last part of the question or anything. What was it, Sean?
Well, he was asking about the pay, but then just essentially how you even are getting licensed by a commission.
So then I answered it. I think I've answered it enough.
You nailed it. You nailed it. Yeah, I'm still living down that I blew Kipling's name, but we're moving on.
The big R.
I was an English major, but I did go to a state university, so it kind of
You were an English major, and you can't remember you read your Kipling. My God.
Sad.
F. Scott who?
I should have tried harder in high school and gone to a private college, I think, but it didn't work out for me that way. Our next question comes via Twitter and the hashtag AskBJM from, and I like this, @NowWorldOrder. John, can a fighter legally jump off the top of the cage to attack a standing or downed opponent? Isn't that great?
I'm sorry for laughing. Oh, my God. Why is it that we try to always incorporate the world of professional wrestling into MMA? Look at when it comes to the use of the fence, fighters can push off of it. They can jump off of it, meaning put their foot on it, similar to what Anthony Pettis did when he fought Benson Henderson. That's legal. They cannot start to take and grab the top of the cage. Now, how are you going to get up on top of the cage if you can't grab it? Okay, you cannot hold weight on top of the cage. So can someone jump off of the top of the cage? No, they can't jump off of the top of the cage. All right. To attack someone, can they jump off of the side of it and the fencing to attack somebody with a kick, a punch? Yes, they can do that. Okay. It doesn't matter if they are in the standing or in a grounded position. What would alter it is what they could do. If they were in, having their opponent in a standing position, they'd be able to come with a kick to the face, a knee to the face, jumping off of it. Yes, that would be legal. If their opponent was on the ground and they decided to do this jumping maneuver off of it, well, then they wouldn't be able to do anything to the face as far as a kick or a knee, but they could still, come down and use a punch to the head or face area, but they could still jump off of it and do a kick or a knee to the body.
Now that we're on the Rules and Regs Committee for MMA, maybe we'll change that. We'll have the Jimmy Superfly snooker rule. Wouldn't that be awesome?
That's exactly
Climb up to the top of the cage.
As soon as the question was like, oh, look at it. There's the Jimmy Superfly snooker. Because, that was of my age. I remember Superfly jumping off the top rope.
Remember, email us your questions, info@letsgetitonpodcast.com. Submit them via our website, letsgetitonpodcast.com, on SpeakPipe, and on Twitter by using the hashtag AskBJM. Still to come on this week's episode of Let's Get It On, Big John and I will speak with Trisha Morrison, the widow of the late heavyweight boxer Tommy Morrison, who will tell us why she's filed a lawsuit to prove that her husband was misdiagnosed with the HIV virus in 1996, which effectively ended his boxing career. With John McCarthy, I'm Sean Wheelock, and you are listening to Let's Get It On.
Hey, this is Darren Pang. Alongside my partner, Kelly Chase, here on Chasing Pucks with Panger. This is our NHL podcast, and it's on NHLpodcast.com, and it's damn good. It's really good. So you got to listen up. Make sure you download us. Make sure you figure it out. Anything you want to know about the NHL, stories, we got lots of stories. Chaser, do we have lots of stories?
We got stories, folks. Title in, you're going to love it. Buckle up. We came back to St. Louis. Scott Pellerin was living in my house. He was living in my house, sitting in my stall in the locker room wearing number 39. Okay, they just gave him that number at the start of the year. We're going to have the home opener. I said to him, don't move into my house just yet because there's a small chance I'm going to get traded back to St. Louis. So don't move in today. I'll know by 3 o'clock. But the movers are coming. I said, Scotty, he moved in. I got traded 3:30 that day. So I'm driving back to St. Louis. I phoned Scott Pellerin. I come back in the morning for the home opener. I come down. His stuff is in my stall.
39 is on his back.
Take 39 from him, take my stall from him, take my house back. Poor kid's out, and out. Strike 1, 2, and boom. Back to the cage, kid.
No kidding.
Oh, great guy, too, Scotty Pellerin.
Hey guys, it's the Ocho Man with the show Ocho Man Behind the 8 Ball. What can I say? This show covers it all, from sports, politics, whatever's out there of interest, we cover it all. Our co-host, we got Armand. I definitely feel that he's got a bomb shelter somewhere with right-wingers hanging out, ready to take over the world. And on the other end here, I got Nick. Nick's an alien. I really believe that Nick landed on this planet re-educate us all, you might say. Again, check our show out every Friday. I'm sure you'll love it. Also, to find out more about our show, go to ochoman.com. I'm sure you won't be disappointed.
Behind the 8 ball, all my life that's where I've been.
It don't matter. You can't have it on a plane.
You were on the Polar Express.
Don't.
You're on a
sled.
sled.
I'm saying that they keep it with them
toboggan.
traditionally or whatever. You can't have that on a train or a plane or anything like that. Fuck you. I don't care what you got. I don't want you with a knife on a train or a plane or anything.
Are you okay with the beard?
I'm okay with the beard. You can have your beard, but just don't dunk it in my soup or anything.
Real bad love. That's the cause in my head.
Hey guys, if you're a fan of Let's Get It On and want to show us some love and support our podcast, before your next Amazon purchase, go to our website at letsgetitonpodcast.com and click the Amazon banner on the right-hand side of the page. It doesn't cost you anything, and there are no extra steps to go through. But doing this supports the podcast and allows us to continue to bring you great content every week. Remember, before you shop on Amazon, go to our website at letsgetitonpodcast.com and click the Amazon banner on the right side of the page. Thanks a lot.
Let's Get It On is presented by Audible.com. Audible is now offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. To download your free audiobook today, go online to audibletrial.com/letsgetiton. Again, that is audibletrial.com/letsgetiton for your free audiobook.
When looking for new and exciting clothing concepts, look no further than Lambs to Lions. Lambs to Lions has great designs that incorporates the past from boxing with the new and exciting evolution of MMA. We all start out as lambs, but with time, training, and hard work, we can all become lions. Be part of the Lambs to Lions movement and check out all of their great designs. You can get your Lambs to Lions gear at the Las Vegas Fight Shop or go to lambstolionsbrand.com.
Now, back to Let's Get It On with your hosts, Big John McCarthy and Sean Wheelock.
This past week, in a completely random occurrence, I met Trisha Morrison, the widow of Tommy Morrison, who was, of course, one of boxing's top heavyweights in the 1990s. Morrison recorded 48 wins with 42 knockouts in his 52-fight pro career, which included victories over George Foreman, Donovan Razor Ruddock, and Pinklin Thomas. He also captured the WBO world title and starred alongside Sylvester Stallone in Rocky V. In 1996, at the age of 27, Morrison tested positive for the HIV virus prior to his scheduled bout versus Arthur Stormy Weathers in Las Vegas, which resulted in Morrison's immediate suspension by the Nevada Commission, a suspension which has never been rescinded. In 2013, Tommy Morrison passed away at age 44. Before we begin our interview with Trisha Morrison, a few things for you to keep in mind. What you're going to hear from Trisha Morrison will be controversial and to many of you inflammatory. Big John and I are neither her advocates nor her adversaries. Instead, we're giving Trisha Morrison a platform to tell her story, the basis of which is that her late husband, Tommy Morrison, never had the HIV virus, and this misdiagnosis cost him his career, his reputation, and millions of dollars. It's up to all of you to form your own opinions. Every person who she's going to mention in this interview will have the opportunity to come on our program and respond to her comments. All they need to do is email us, info@letsgetitonpodcast.com. Trisha, thanks very much for being on Let's Get It On.
Thank you.
Well, the widely accepted version of events is that your late husband, Tommy Morrison, contracted the HIV virus and ultimately died due to full-blown AIDS. But I know that you feel that this is completely false.
Well, it is completely false, yes.
Tell us why.
Well, first of all, how did you hear he had contracted HIV?
All the media reports in 1996 when he was going to fight Arthur Stormy Weathers in Las Vegas. The Nevada Commission reported that he had tested positive for the HIV virus. They suspended his license and canceled that fight.
Right, that's right. Yep, it all goes back to 1996. How I refute it? Well, when Tommy passed away on September 1, 2013, he had blood drawn and they found no retroviruses in his blood. And retroviruses are what's known as HIV in the scientific world. So I had always promised Tommy, we once went to see a movie together, and he said, Trisha, you know, when they come to do my movie and my story's not over yet, promise me that it'll tell the truth. And I said, yeah, absolutely. So when I found out that there were no retroviruses in his blood, I made immediate contact with the doctor in Las Vegas. Dr. Voy is his name. Real nice guy, apparently, and very well respected in Las Vegas. And so I started there, and literally I did. I said to him, you know, you'd better have good medical malpractice because you know, I'm sorry, but, you know, Tommy never had HIV or the retrovirus, as it's known. And he was very pleasant. He actually got his attorney to respond back to me. It took maybe a couple of months, but December 21, 2013, his attorney writes, Dear Mrs. Morrison, and I've got it right in front of me here, it is important that you understand that Dr. Voy did not diagnose and never has diagnosed Mr. Morrison as HIV positive. It goes on to say, Dr. Voy did not diagnose Mr. Morrison as harboring the HIV virus. Please understand that this will be the last response that you will receive from either me or Dr. Voy. We have already shared everything we know about Mr. Morrison's 1996 testing with you. Please allow Dr. Voy to now devote his full-time resources and energies to his patients and family. So I did. I let it go, and I thought, okay, well, that makes sense. You know, if he didn't die from HIV, then he couldn't have died from AIDS because you have to have HIV to die of AIDS. So there has to be somebody else that diagnosed him because it's all over the media. It's even all over the media with ESPN a week before Tommy passed away, that the Nevada Commission diagnosed him with HIV. So I started, guys, to look at all the media outlets and see what they had printed. And I come across, okay, let me try the test kit companies. You know, if Dr. Voy didn't diagnose him, then surely it was the test kit companies. I didn't want to make myself look stupid. So I contacted each test kit company, and each of them, the ones that the Nevada Commission uses, they each said, well, we never even see the patient. We don't know who it is. We don't know what symptoms. We don't know what that person has that could cause a false positive. Plus, we even put inside the package inserts of every test that we do disclaimers. And so I started to look up the disclaimers, and yeah, quite rightly so, they have disclaimers in there. One of them says, at present there is no recognized standard for establishing the presence or absence of HIV-1 antibody in human blood. So you can't use that to detect HIV. So I went on to the second one that the Nevada Commission uses, and it says, do not use this test as the sole basis of diagnosis of HIV. And I thought, okay, well, then there's got to be another one. So I went to the third test, and I actually got an email back from the company that makes the test. They sent me the disclaimer, which everybody should have, you guys should have, the commission should have, and it says, this test is not intended to be used as a screening test for HIV or as a diagnostic test to confirm the presence of HIV infection. So I'm thinking, okay, the doctor didn't diagnose, the test kit companies didn't diagnose, there has to be somebody else. So I go back to the media again, which is what you all did, and I pull up an article that's written by a Dr. Margaret Goodman. And, she comes highly recommended by the media, and she's was the chair of the Nevada Commission's Medical Advisory Board. And I look up her articles in the Arizona Central, the USA Today, the MMA News, New York Times, Times Online. I mean, lots of media outlets have printed this article, and I'm going to read it to you because this is what led me on to the next part. It was written actually by Margaret Goodman, MD, and it was written in 2007. She says, Morrison's name resurfaced in the news recently when he said he was resuming his boxing career and that he had been mistakenly diagnosed as HIV positive by the state of Nevada. And then she goes on to write, at that point, I contacted renowned Quest Diagnostics pathologist, Dr. John Hyatt. Dr. Hyatt has worked with the Nevada Commission for many years and was the physician who reviewed Morrison's original 1996 HIV results. At my request, Dr. Hyatt reviewed the archived results yet again. He says that they are ironclad and unequivocal. So I'm thinking, great, okay, I've got Dr. Margaret Goodman. She knows exactly who the doctor is, so it's a Dr. John Hyatt. So I start Googling this Dr. John Hyatt, and he's not a doctor. He's not licensed to practice medicine, and he's not a pathologist. So
was he a lab worker then?
I have no idea what he was, but he certainly wasn't a renowned pathologist or a physician or licensed to practice medicine whatsoever. So then I contact the Nevada State Athletic Commission and Mr. Ratner, Mark Ratner, who, Tommy absolutely adored. He thought very highly of Mark. And I thought, yeah, okay, I'm going to get an answer from Mr. Ratner. So I start emailing the Nevada Commission. I get no response, nothing at all. I'm asking them, hey, have you read the test kit disclaimers? By the way, Tommy didn't have HIV. Who out of you guys diagnosed him? That canceled the fight, led to indefinite suspension, turned his life upside down. And I got no answers. So in the end, I went to the lab, Quest Labs, and I went and I asked exactly the same questions. There's this Dr. John Hyatt. He works for you. You've told the commission that, my husband was HIV positive in 96. It can't be true because the physician hasn't diagnosed him with it, and he didn't die of it. They never found any virus in his blood. No virus. I mean, none. Not even viral particles. Nothing. And I kept asking questions, kept getting roadblocks all the time. And so I gave everybody an ultimatum. I said, answer me, or I will ask the court in Nevada to help me. All I'm trying to find out is who diagnosed him, because the media says that he was diagnosed, plus his whole life was turned upside down because of this diagnosis.
Trisha, let me ask you a question. Hold on. You're playing with words here, okay? And I do not mean to get on you in any way, but you're talking about a test that was taken in 1996 for him to get a license to box, okay? And with that test, he had a failure. Now, that's not a diagnosis, okay? No, that's a failure of a test, okay? You can take a test and fail it. It's not a diagnosis. And so what they did, and at the time in 1996, Mark Ratner would have been the executive director of the Nevada State Athletic Commission, but all they're doing is saying, we're not going to allow you to have a license to compete here. We're not going to license you. It's not that their doctor is giving, oh, we're diagnosing you. What they're going to tell you is, hey, this is what you tested for and this is what we found. You need to go see a doctor. Is that what he did?
No, that's not what happened. They canceled the fight, and he was told he was HIV positive.
There was never a canceling of a fight because he wasn't licensed to fight. So the fight obviously didn't take place because he wasn't licensed. Yes.
John, since the lawsuit, I find his license number was C1306. He was licensed to fight, and he did the weigh-in the night before the fight. You can't do a weigh-in without a license, can you?
But listen, you can do a weigh-in, but when you have that license can be suspended by the athletic commission at any time. And before the fight, the license was suspended.
Okay, now for what reason was it suspended?
Because they did a test that he didn't pass.
Okay, and what didn't he pass for?
From what we're reading, he didn't pass for passing HIV.
Okay.
That doesn't. Hold on. I want to make this clear to you. That doesn't mean that that's a diagnosis of him having HIV. It's saying that you didn't pass this test. Now that can be a lot of things, but if you didn't pass the test, we are not going to allow you to fight because you could be a danger in certain areas to another combatant that combatant doesn't want to participate in this. Okay, so we're not going to allow this fight to happen. We're suspending your license until you can prove that you don't have it. That's really what comes about. So then he goes, supposedly, I asked you, did he go and see a doctor? And you said no. That's what anybody we would think would go and do if someone came and said, you tested positive for HIV.
Right. Okay. So if you're told you're tested positive for HIV, then you have HIV. Is that right?
There's a possibility I have it. If someone tells me I test positive, I'm definitely going to go get another test. I'm not going to sit there and take the one for truth.
Which test would you
get? I'm definitely not going to sit there and not find out, well, what the hell's going on.
Right. And which test would you take?
I couldn't tell you which test I would take. I would go to the best person I could find to have a test.
Right. Well, would you, before you ask a boxer to go and get a test for HIV in Nevada or even wherever, the boxer is trying to get a license, before you tell him to go and get an HIV test, would you not find out whether that test detected HIV first?
I'm not clear on what you're trying to ask me there.
Well, it's like taking a car for an oil change.
If I took a test for an athletic commission, okay, and in that test it comes back, no matter what it is, HIV, hepatitis, any of those things, that they come back and say you have this, I'm obviously going to go to my own physician at that time to find out, hey, they said I have this. What's going on? And from that point, we're going to find out.
Right. Okay. And we did find out. In 2013, we actually found out.
Stop. You can't tell me that we're going to sit there from 1996 when someone gets tested and that we're not going to go and find out again if it's true or not until 2013. That doesn't make sense.
Well, it makes
that's not
total
living with
sense,
reality.
John. What we're living with reality right now is that the tests that were out in the market do not detect HIV. So how are you ever going to know whether you test for HIV or not?
Let me ask you a question, Trisha. Do you believe in HIV? Do you think there is HIV?
You know what? It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant whether I believe in it or not. Yes, it is.
It's not irrelevant at all. You had a husband who was diagnosed in your opinion.
Now wait, diagnosed.
Now
he was diagnosed.
Not diagnosed, but failed an HIV test. And this is back before you even knew him, but failed an HIV test, and you're believing that he didn't have HIV. Okay, so I'm asking you, do you believe that there is this thing called HIV or the AIDS virus?
You know, John, we're talking about Tommy Morrison here. We're not talking about what my beliefs are, right? We're talking
we are talking about it because you're believing that he didn't have it because you're saying it wasn't true.
You've just said that he failed an HIV test and was diagnosed with HIV, okay? So my whole basis of my lawsuit is who diagnosed him with HIV, right? Was he not kicked out of boxing because he had HIV? Where did it say because he failed a test? Where does it say that in the media? And where does it say, well, you can...
Hold on. It does say that he failed the test.
Okay, because...
He did. He failed a test for HIV. Don't ask me because I don't know.
Okay.
I wasn't the doctor giving it or anything. And I'm not saying that he was diagnosed by Margaret Goodman or anybody from the state of Nevada. But what I'm telling you is when he takes the test and he fails it, they're not saying for sure that you have this disease. What they're saying is you tested positive. And if you test positive, we're not going to allow you to fight in our state with this possibility of you having this disease. And that is for the safety of other people.
Right. So let me ask you a question. How do they know that that person's tested positive for HIV?
They did a blood test on him. They took a test. He didn't pass it. I'm not saying that means that he has HIV. I'm saying he didn't pass it. This has nothing to do with the diagnosis. This has to do with he didn't pass a test, so he wasn't licensed. So it would be incumbent upon him to then go and find someone to say, no, he doesn't have it.
Okay, wouldn't it be incumbent of the Nevada Commission to find out whether the tests that they're making Tommy Morrison do even diagnose or even detect the presence or absence of the virus, don't you think?
No, there's a lot
yes
of...
or no?
Hold on. No, I don't.
No,
I'm
you
telling
don't.
you, there's a lot of tests that people take, okay, that become something that someone says, you possibly have this. You do have this. And later on, it's comes back, no. Yes, there is.
John.
Okay, because I've been diagnosed with things that I don't have. And so you can't sit there. It's just a basis of if you possibly have it, you take a test, they're trying to diagnose you, but it's not your final diagnosis.
Okay, then, John, if the Nevada Commission says, we want you to take this test to see if you have HIV or not, and if you fail it, it's obviously because you've got HIV or maybe not, right? They don't tell you at the time you take the test that, oh, well, you know, this may or may not detect HIV. So are you trying to tell me that in 1996, the test that they used on Tommy Morrison detected HIV? Yes or no?
I can't tell you any of it. I wasn't there for it. All I can tell you is what I know is that he failed the test given by the Nevada State Athletic Commission.
And who said that he failed the test?
And this is at a point, hold on, this is at a point where the HIV virus and AIDS is not really that well known. You know, well, it's gotten to a point, I think Magic Johnson got diagnosed somewhere around 1990, 91, 92, somewhere in there. And things tended to seem to gain speed off of it. But still, even today, 2015, the AIDS virus, whether you believe it's real or not, there's 36 million people that have died from it. There's another 36 million people that are infected with it. in the world,
Right.
I'd say it's real. Now, is it a
Okay, well, that's fair
possibility?
enough.
Is it a possibility that Tommy had it? Yes. Is it a possibility that he didn't? Well, I could say yes, but I sure would think that somebody that possibly had it would go to other people that know about the disease to find out, do I really have this?
Right.
And then if he didn't, hold on, if he didn't, then he's going to go back to that athletic commission and prove, hey, your test was wrong. Here's the proof.
Right. That's
Why
right.
wasn't that done?
And let me ask you a question. So
Why wasn't that done?
What would he have to?
Hold on. Why wasn't
no.
that done?
I'm going to ask you a question first.
No, I want the answer before I give you an answer. Why wasn't that done?
Okay. If he did it, what would he have had to have shown the commission that he did not have HIV? What would he have had to have shown?
I can't tell you, I'm not a doctor, but I know that there's doctors out there that are not going to take. Hold on, stop. You want an answer? Let me talk. You sit there and you want to sit there and tell me, what does he have to prove? I'm not going to say the exact things because I'm not the doctor that knows. But if there's doctors out there who will stake their reputation on the fact that Tommy does not have it, and here is the proof, the athletic commission is going to look at that and take that and understand exactly why this doctor is saying. Then they're going to go to their experts and say, is this factual? Is this truthful?
Right.
And if Tommy wanted to box when he was proved to not have it, they would give him a license and he could box. And your whole thing is saying that he wasn't allowed to do his career.
Right. Yeah, correct. And so if you don't mind answering my question, right, what would the Nevada Athletic Commission accept today, or even in 1996, as proof that that person never had HIV? What would he have to have given them, right, as proof that he did not have HIV?
I couldn't give you the exact, hold on. I can't give you the exact type of test, but what someone would have to do is bring evidence that they've had this blood test by an accredited lab and an accredited doctor who has comprehensively gone through their medical history, and this is what they have and this is what they do not have, whatever it is. And that's what they would take. And then they would take those findings and they would go to their medical people, and their medical people would decide whether this was valid or if it wasn't.
Okay. All right. So would it have to be in writing? Would it have to be in the form of a lab report? What do you think?
I think
what kind of proof?
Well, first off, it's going to have to be multiple. There's going to have to be lab reports. Can it be in writing?
Right.
You're going to have to go before the athletic commission, probably in person.
Right.
And before the commission, under oath, you're going to have to testify exactly as the doctor that is treating or has examined Mr. Morrison. You're going to have to say exactly what test you did, how you did the test, what your findings were, and that is all part of the governance of the sport.
And I totally agree with you, John. I totally agree with you. So ultimately, the Nevada rule says that each boxer has to provide either a certified or original lab report that shows that they are free from the virus. Is that correct?
I can't say that's correct or not. In Tommy's situation, I would say yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Perfect. So we're on the same page here. Well,
you guys took a long way to get to the same
page.
We're on the same page here. You go do a license application.
Trisha,
you fill everything in. Can I just finish? Right.
Please. Then I'll ask you a question.
Okay. You go through the process, you fill out the application, you go and have your physical done by the physician, you go take the test that is supposed to detect HIV, and then the lab prints out the results as being whether you have HIV or not, and the boxer or the promoter or the manager hands that lab report, original or certified, to the Nevada Commission and says, bam, here, everything's cool. He can fight stormy weathers, right? That's the process, okay? Right?
Trisha, so my question to you now is, do you feel that your late husband, Tommy Morrison, in your heart, do you feel he was a victim of incompetence or a victim of conspiracy, or maybe a little of both?
Well, I think that, if it's conspiracy, then that will come out in the wash as well in this lawsuit. I think that the Nevada Commission has to definitely look at the rules. They're using a lab report which actually does not state anything that the commission is asking for. And I have, under oath, I have exactly what each defendant is now claiming, right? Everything. So I'm moving forward with this. Mark Ratner, as I mentioned, he seems like a really decent guy. He's actually under oath, says he doesn't know how to interpret medical results. It's not his job, right?
He's not a doctor.
Exactly. And the test is not a diagnosis of any condition, he says. He says he doesn't administer tests. I mean, he's saying all the right things. And he also, unfortunately, says he has no knowledge about any specific tests, which is a shame because I think before the commission mandates a test for HIV, they need to know whether that test is going to detect HIV or not for the safety of boxers, right? And he has actually admitted he hasn't had no knowledge at any time of any of the test disclaimers inside. That's Mark Ratner. Dr. Margaret Goodman, after coming out with her media outbursts, I mean, she says, quite blatantly under oath, well, she doesn't have any documents. She now claims that she never diagnosed Tommy Morrison, right? And then this pathologist, John Hyatt, who's supposed to be a well-renowned pathologist and physician, he says he was never involved. He said he has no personal or first-hand knowledge, and he even admits that he never retrieved or diagnosed or publicly stated any medical condition for Morrison, which is totally, different to what Margaret Goodman is saying to the media. And then you've got the Nevada State Athletic Commission that's being held responsible in the media by ESPN, saying that Tommy Morrison dodged the diagnosis that was made on him by the Nevada State Athletic Commission in 1996, right? So everybody's pointing fingers at each other. And then when it comes to the lab, John and Sean, the commission is asking for an original or certified copy of a lab report in order for them to issue a license that states, whether you're negative for HIV or positive for HIV, and yet the lab says they don't provide such a thing. They don't know what the Nevada Commission is going to do with the receipt of any test results. They don't know. In other words, they're not holding themselves responsible either for whatever is printed on their sheet of paper. So, and then you've got the test kit companies, guys, that say, well, our tests don't detect HIV. So somebody made a mistake. Was it his own blood?
Why are you saying there was a mistake?
Somebody made a mistake.
Real question. I asked you before, you didn't answer it. Do you believe that there is the HIV and AIDS virus?
I would like to see the virus under a microscope. I have never actually physically seen the real virus. I've seen computerized images of it, and I've seen some electron microscope images of it.
Stop. Hold on. I got a question here. An electron microscope is not a computer image. I've seen that exact electron microscope image of the HIV virus. How else are you going to see it?
Exactly. I mean, that's right. But me personally, I haven't seen it myself under an electron microscope is what I'm saying. All I've ever seen, when
so
you
you're
say
saying you don't believe
in it, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I've seen a computerized image of it, and I've seen an electron microscope photo of it on the computer. I haven't personally seen it.
Do you believe that there is an illness that is called HIV or AIDS? Do you believe that illness is real?
There could be, but let me tell you, it did not exist. I'm not a physician, but let me tell you, it did not exist in Tommy Morrison.
And how can you know that?
Because they did a test in his final hours of his blood.
And he died at the age of 44.
I'm sorry?
He died at the age of 44.
And Trish, if I may, he died in the state of Nebraska. And I understand that the coroner's report listed cause of death as cardiac arrest. And if you're uncomfortable talking about this, the death of your husband, it's too painful. I certainly understand. But is there anything you want to talk about that? The fact that Tommy was a world-class athlete and he passed away from cardiac arrest at age 44?
Yeah, he actually, in 2011, he was arrested in Tennessee on a fugitive warrant of arrest. And he was thrown into jail for 2 weeks in Tennessee and then flown to Kansas for another week under a sealed warrant of arrest, which ended up being an unpaid fine for $80 of an event that happened in 2006. When he came out of jail in 2011, he came out with an insect bite to the side of his chest. It was either a tick or a spider, the doctor said. And they drained it, and we went back to Tennessee, and the surgeon said, you know, we've got to get in there, we've got to do surgery. So we scheduled a surgery for November. That was canceled. We went then eventually in December. It was supposed to be a 1-hour surgery. And we drove there. Actually, Tommy drove. We parked in the 2-hour parking. We went in, and we didn't come out for 8 days. When we finally got home, the home health lady came the next day, and she took off a bandage from the side of Tommy's chest. And I said, no, wait, there's something else in there. And she said, no, this is all the orders I've got. I've just got one bandage to do on the side of the chest. And I said, no, there's something else in there. And there were some threads hanging out of his chest. And so she slowly pulled them out, and he was sitting in the kitchen. And 12 foot of surgical gauze came out of his chest that had been left in there a week. And that evening, he fell on the way to the bedroom, and his head went straight through a wall, and he fell on his neck. And from that moment onwards, for the next 21 months, he was in and out of septic shock, and his voice box got paralyzed. He couldn't talk, he couldn't eat, because his neck was at a slant. He got torticollis. So it was a horrible ride for the next 21 months, and he died of cardiac arrest, septic shock, hospital-acquired blood disease from the gauze, and multi-organ failure.
John, you want to ask a final question for Trisha?
No, I'm good. And Trisha, you know what? Hey, I love how you stand by your man, and he was an incredible athlete, an incredible boxer. But the finger pointing that's kind of going on with this is about trying to get someone to say something about a person and their disease that they had. It's a shame that we have to think about Tommy Morrison as far as a disease. He was a great fighter. He came out, he put on incredible, performances against top flight people. He became the WBO world champion at a certain point. That's the way people need to remember Tommy Morrison.
Well, that's right. And that's why I'm trying to get the defendants to retract some of this media stuff that's out there, John, that says that he was diagnosed by the Nevada Commission, and also that the Quest Labs report is a diagnosis when it's not. And so, you need to clear it up in the media. And why would they not retract stuff like that? right? Especially when it comes to misrepresentation of somebody that's not even a physician. It just doesn't make sense, you know. I'm on my fourth judge, John. You know, why would the Nevada Commission start pleading immunity if they weren't hiding something? It just doesn't make any sense. Why would they use 3 tests that don't diagnose HIV? And that's not coming from me, right? It's coming from the test kit companies. Why would they even ask for a lab report as proof that Tommy Morrison did or did not have HIV when
the real problem here is you're mixing things up in as far as what people are going to say. Yes, hold on. Okay, it's as simple as it gets. People are not going to, the test kit company is not going to say this is going to diagnose you with HIV. It's going to be an indicator. That's what they'll call it. It's an indicator for the disease. That's the test that Tommy took, and it indicated he had the disease. It's not the diagnosis. You're looking for the one person to say, this is the one that diagnosed him.
Who is it? Tell me.
You tell me. I don't know. And it doesn't matter to me.
Well, it matters. Why doesn't it matter to you?
It matters to you because then that's money. That's what this comes down to. You have a lawsuit, and that's why you're getting all these evasive answers.
Oh, I'm getting evasive answers because of what? Because nobody can tell me who diagnosed him, or because of money? Which one?
Why do you have a lawsuit? I want to know, why do you have a lawsuit?
I tell you why I have a lawsuit, because they didn't answer the questions that I'm still asking in the lawsuit out of the lawsuit.
Okay, and what do you want with your lawsuit?
I want them to tell me who diagnosed Tommy Morrison with HIV. Wouldn't you want to know? I mean, obviously you don't care, but, you know, for his, you don't. But somebody had to diagnose him.
It doesn't matter. That's the whole point here.
It does matter,
to you,
John.
and that's okay. I understand that. It matters to you. You want that one person, but it doesn't matter because Tommy ended up having a life where it was affected by whatever disease he had, and you can't say he didn't have something. Okay.
You know what?
He obviously was
a
220-pound guy when he was healthy.
Right.
Right.
And
how much
was
he weighing near the end?
He weighed, when he got out of jail, he weighed 205 in 2011. And when he passed away, it was probably about 199. I didn't weigh him. But the only time he lost weight was when he was on drugs, John.
Well,
when he was on cocaine,
I can look at
when he was on all that hard stuff.
And I can see pictures of him when he was a healthy boxing athlete, and I can see pictures of him when he was not boxing anymore, and you can't tell me that he was 200 pounds.
Okay. All right. And give me the date.
Those photos are just, they're there, and he's awfully thin.
Give me the date of that photo.
I don't have a date on the photo. I don't have a date of the photo. I got a photo that I looked at.
That's something you need to look at.
No, I don't. It doesn't matter. The date of the photo doesn't matter to me. I can see that Tommy is an older person in this photo than he is when he is fighting in this photo.
Right. Okay. But you have to be specific, John. In 1996, he looked like that, right? So in 2011, you want him still to look like he looked in 96. So the photo of him in 2011 before he went for surgery and the 21 months of hell in hospital and ICU, he doesn't look healthy in that photo? Is that what you're saying? And you're basing it on a photo?
You're talking about. I can't base it on whatever photo you're talking about that I don't know I've seen.
Well, exactly. Then why do you come out on your radio show, on your podcast, to say that in his photo he looked sick, right? And you're not even looking at the photograph. I didn't say he looked sick. You're
trying to put other words in there. I didn't say he looks sick. I said he's thin. There's a difference. There's a lot of people that look thin that aren't sick, but there's people that are thin that look sick. You're the one saying he looks sick.
No. Well, that's my interpretation of what you said. So what I'm going to do for you, right, is I'm going to send you the most recent photograph of him, not in his Rocky days, right, John? I'm going to send you a photograph of him 2011 before he went into surgery. And I want you to look at that photograph, and I want you to tell me, oh, my goodness, right? What I said to Trisha just now was absolute BS. And then I will show you a photograph of him when he was on drugs, okay, which was actually quite around 96, 98, around there. And then you can determine for yourself which photograph you prefer, right? Photo of him on drugs or a photograph of him off drugs and actually looking really good.
Trish, I want to take a personal note on this. As I told you when I met you last week, I knew your late husband, Tommy Morrison, a little bit. He was living in Kansas City through most of his great run through the 90s in boxing. He actually lived about 15 minutes from where I was living at the time. I knew him casually. Every time that I saw him, though, he was warm, he was polite, he was respectful. He was a genuinely enjoyable person to be around. And that's the Tommy Morrison I think about. And I never had the pleasure to referee one of his fights, but I refereed quite a few of his fights where he would be in the corner working with younger fighters, acting as a chief second. I really have very, very fond memories of Tommy Morrison, and I thank you very much for coming on to our podcast. And it's very admirable of the way that you stand up, you defend Tommy Morrison, you defend his reputation, and you answer all the questions.
Yeah, I answered the questions, but unfortunately, John didn't take the time to tell me who diagnosed Tommy Morrison with HIV on February 10th, 1996.
Trisha, if you're looking for John McCarthy to be the person to give you information on who diagnosed someone, you're absolutely just way off base.
See, I was trying to end this segment on an up note, you guys.
Well, how about this, John? How about I tell you in the end who diagnosed Tommy Morrison with HIV in 1996? Because right now I can tell you I have a handful of defendants that are all saying that they never diagnosed Tommy Morrison with HIV, that they actually don't print out anything that ever says that a person's diagnosed, and actually the Nevada Commission should not be using those tests because they don't detect HIV. So you're going to kick somebody out of boxing because they're on nasal spray, right? Or have flu or mononucleosis or something that's not contagious in the ring, then the Nevada Commission needs to think about what they're asking a boxer to provide, right? But you can't kick somebody out of boxing for HIV when they don't have HIV and they have absolutely no proof of HIV.
Trisha, thank you again for coming on the program. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate your time. John, I'm not saying that got contentious, but my daughters, Ellie and Hadley, are yelling in the background just off mic, and you just kept going. I'm not sure if you even heard them. I have a 10-year-old and a 4-year-old arguing in the back.
I heard them. Look, it all comes down to this. First off, I loved watching Tommy Morrison as a boxer. He was exciting. Most of his fights ended in knockouts. But, when you get into this whole thing, really, I don't know how to say this in any other fashion, but this is coming down to money. I've done a lot of things through charities for AIDS. I know people that have died of AIDS. It doesn't matter what disease Tommy Morrison died from. Okay? He contracted a disease, whatever it was. And it's unfortunate that a man at 44 years of age passed. But this is coming down to lawsuits. She has a lawsuit. Why do people have lawsuits? Because they want money. Why do they want money? Let's see. They want to enact something that is going to make something that was unfair fair. Well, what was unfair here? She's trying to say that the Nevada State Athletic Commission took away Tommy Morrison's boxing career. No, sorry, they didn't. Tommy Morrison did. That's just the facts. That's just the way it is. They didn't make him, do anything. He, through his life and what he did, ended up coming down with something that tested in a way that they said they didn't want to put him against another fighter. That's part of living your life. And, unfortunately, it caught up to him at a certain point, and he wasn't able to box anymore. But boxing is not a right. It's a privilege. Any kind of combat sports, you don't have the right to do it. It's a privilege that you're able to take part in it. And you need to do the right things to be able to continue down that road. And if you make decisions in your life that end up causing you to not be able to participate in, that is your fault. You need to do the right things. Again, it's a privilege.
We are back with you next week for an all-new episode of Let's Get It On, first available on Friday. Download and subscribe to our podcast on the iTunes Store. For Android, download the Stitcher app and subscribe. And you can go straight to our website, letsgetitonpodcast.com. You can also find us on social media, facebook.com/letsgetitonpodcast, and on Twitter @PodcastMMA for this show, and for us personally, @John McCarthy MMA and @Sean Wheelock. To ask us a question, make a comment, or inquire about becoming a sponsor of Let's Get It On, email us at info@letsgetitonpodcast.com. Again, that's info@letsgetitonpodcast.com. For John McCarthy, our guest Trisha Morrison, producer Chris Lakin, and our entire crew, I'm Sean Wheelock. Thanks for listening, everyone. This has been a presentation of Lineup Media Group, online at lineupmediagroup.com.
Let's Get It On with Big John McCarthy and Sean Wheelock on the Lineup Media Group Podcast Network. Leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, or wherever you listen to the show. If you have questions, comments, or are interested in sponsoring Let's Get It On, contact us at info@letsgetitonpodcast.com. Get all the Lineup Media Group podcasts like Chasing Bucks with Panger on NHLpodcast.com, Ocho Man Behind the Eight Ball, and You're on the Clock NFL on our website at lineupmediagroup.com.